Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the live conversation series with UiPath Aspirant. So this time I was being approached by a UiPath Aspirant who wanted to know the various aspects of an RPA developer. So we thought of having a live conversation and here it is. Let us see the agenda. So yes, this is the agenda for today's session. We would be discussing about the automation first mindset. What are the various components of business processes? What is as is versus a to be flow? How do we know whether a process is a good candidate for automation or not? How do we define the automation complexity? What are the different categories we can put a processes on? We are also going to discuss about the RPA life cycles and the various stakeholders which are included. We are going to see the various roles and responsibilities across the RPA lifecycle, and at the end we are going to wrap up with the RPA developers roles and responsibility. For all the videos there is a timestamp which is available in the description. In case you want to jump to a specific section, just go to the description and click on the timestamp. The video shall navigate to that topic. You are an UiPath aspirant and want to have a similar conversation with me on any of the topic of UiPath, all you have to do is just drop me an email on the email ID which is available in the description. Coming to the channel for the first time and haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the latest updates. Having said that, let's get started. Okay. Okay, so hi, today we are going to discuss about what exactly is a RPA developer. What are the expectation from an RPA UiPath developer? I'm also going to refer it as an automation developer. This is a course which is available in the UiPath Academy, which talks about the roles and responsibility of an automation developer. I have just taken some of the glimpses from that course. You can also have a look into it. So first of all, whenever you have any questions, right, you can just unmute yourself and ask me any questions. I'll be happy to answer you the queries. Okay. So the first thing, whenever we talk about an automation developer, it is also known as RPA developer. It can be any of the technology of RPA. UiPath developer or an RPA developer require two things and a broader way, which is the technical skill, which means that you need to have a technical skill, which means that you should have a knowledge of the UiPath tool itself to build the complete automation. That is your technical skill. When I talk about technical skill, it also includes some of the programming background, such as how do you write loops, how do you iterate through collection, what is a dictionary, and all those things. Basics of the programming knowledge is also required whenever you are working as an RPA developer on the top of your UiPath skills. The second thing which an RPA developer should possess is that ability to understand the business process, which means that if I give you some process, as an RPA developer, you should have an ability to understand that what exactly that process is doing and how we can actually fit automation on top of it. So there is a mindset which we called is called the automation first mindset, which means that the developer needs to constantly look at the work and the processes from an automation lens. And the first question which you should ask is, how can I automate this task to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness, right? Why we are doing the automation? We are doing the automation to remove the repetitive and the manual work which the employees are doing, right? So the first thing which you should have to work as an RPA developer is you should have an automation first mindset. That means you should be able to identify that, okay, yes, this is the work which is absolutely mundane and repetitive, and why don't we automate it, right? Then you should have the technical skills and you should have an ability to understand the business process. When I say business process, it is a complete process which the business today is doing manually, right? There is a team of business, 5 users, 10 users, 20 users who are doing that process repetitively mundane on their local systems, right? But how would you understand a business process? So there is a small section at the bottom which says that components of a business process. Whenever I give you any of the business process, it will have 4 major components. The first one is called the input, process flow, source application, and the output, right? So as an RPA developer, you should be knowing that what are the inputs that are required in this business process, right? The data that goes into the process. Taking an example, if I tell you that there is an automation where the team on the daily basis go to the Outlook, reads the email, download all the data and do some of the processing, right? Now the input for your process is nothing but all the emails. If I tell you that you have 100 ServiceNow tickets which you have to process, so in that scenario, the input for you becomes the ServiceNow tickets, right? So you should have an capability to understand that what exactly is the input. Once you understand the input, the second thing is called the process flow, which means that what are the sequence of the steps which I can take manually to accomplish this task, and what are the sequence of steps or the sub processes which I'll do to complete this process. The sequence of steps may be simple, like go to the browser, download the data, paste it in some shared drive and send it via an email, right? This is the process flow. So whenever you get a process, you should have capability to understand what are the input, what are the process flow. The next thing is what are the source applications, right? The application or the system which are being used. It can be browser, Outlook, Adobe, remote, right? Anything, a database, a SharePoint, right? So you should be able to identify that what are all the applications which are being used in the process. And finally, the important bit is the output, right? Why we are doing the automation, what is expected from this automation, right? Which means the result that is generated by the process is called an output, right? Now the output from your automation can be again an input for some different automation, right? So you should be fully aware of these four things whenever you start a process, which means input, process flow, source application, and outputs. So these are the bit of skills which you would be required to work as an RPA developer. Okay, I'll take a pause to have any to answer any of the queries which you have till this point. Any queries you have?
Before like uh, coming to this input, so we have like some like panel, so we can discuss so if the process is going to automate or not, like analyze, architect, and we used to use
Yes,
some
yes. Yeah,
document,
yeah, that part I'm
PBT,
coming. That
SDD.
part I'll come, that what is the team
Okay,
structure look like? What is, who is a solution
yeah,
architect? Where exactly the business
yeah,
analyst will come in picture, right? That is all
okay.
included in this deck. So my question is only till this slide, which I'm explaining. Are you able to understand
No,
what as a RPA developer you need to have and what exactly is a
yeah,
business process? Do you understand this?
yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
understand with cluster clear. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. Let's move forward then. Okay. Now, fine. So this what as of now, whenever we are automating any process, right? The first thing which we get is the as is versus to be. As is means how the business is doing the process manually. Okay. And the to be will be meaning that how the automation is going to do. Now I want to ask you a question. For example, if the business is doing 20 steps, 20 steps, do you think the robot should also do 20 steps to accomplish the same task? Or we can do it in much better way or much efficient way? What do you think?
We can, with the help of robot, we can do in a more efficient manner,
Okay.
and less steps we can
Less steps also, right?
then we can, yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
less time
Okay.
also.
Okay, right. Just to give you an example, let's say there is a business process where the business is having an Excel. That Excel is having a huge amount of data, let's say 5,000 rows, right? Now the business is manually copying, pasting the data, first 1,000 to one Excel, second 1,000, copy and then paste, third, copy and then paste, four, copy and then paste. When I'm doing the automation, I can do is I can read all the 5,000 record at once in a data table, and then I can quickly split the data tables inside UiPath with the help of programming, and then I can write the all the data tables one by one, right? So that means I do not have to do the same operation which the business is doing, but the important thing is the output should exactly the same which they require, right? We should not give them a different output. Output should be same, right? So what you are looking on the screen, this is let's say a typical business process. I have just got it from UiPath Academy only, right? This is a process. Just try to understand this, right? The process start, you open the email. In the email, you would have attachment. Okay. PO means a purchase order. All the emails will have something which is called attachment. Now, in the attachment, you have to check if the product code is present or not. Okay. The happy scenario is the yes, the product code is present. So that means that you need to go to an application, which is an ERP application. This can be any application for that matter. You have to go log into that, put the code which you get from the email. Then you have to type the company specific, add some of the details, and then generate a sales order. Once it is generated, you have to validate the sales order and you have to reply to the same email which you have received here. And then you have to move the email to the process folder, right? So this is one happy flow. But what happens if there is no product code present? Then in that case, you have to open a master file. You have to look for product description. In the master file, you will check if the product is available or not. If the product is available, you get the product code from the master file and then you do this process. But if it is not available in the master file, then you simply go and update the email and say that, okay, this is not a valid product number, right? Now, if you see this entire thing, how many applications are involved? This first block is Outlook, right? Where everything is happening on the Outlook. The second one is a desktop, which the guy is doing on the desktop. And the last one is happening on the ERP, right? Which means the application. Now, if I ask you, you tell me what is the input here. We were just talking, right? You tell me what is the input here.
The input is the mail, and in the mail, the purchase order attachment, purchase order.
Okay. Okay. Now, if I ask you how many applications are involved here.
So here Outlook, desktop, and ERP.
Correct. And what is the final output for this process?
Output, we need to reply with the attachment of service order, and we need to send.
Okay. And this is a manual process, right? Which the business is doing manually, right? So let's say I tell this to you that, okay, you have to do this process. Now, this process comes to me that, okay, Mukesh, you have to automate this process. So I'm not going to automate it as it is, right? What I'll do is I'll go and create something which is called a to be process, right? Which means that now the robot has to do this process, right? Now, if you see here how the robot will do, it will start, it will open the emails. So all these red boxes are the blocks which the robot can actually do, right? So it will go, robot can open the emails, it will go and find the attachment. It will see, yes, the input is structured, which means that the robot is able to read the data from the email, right? If it is able to read the data, then you will go and get the product code, log into the ERP, all this flow, everything is exactly the same, right? Open the ERP, do this processing, and type in the company values, add this value, generate the sales orders, and reply. So this is applicable when the robot is successfully able to read the data. Now, it can also read it with the help of OCR and everything. But what happens if it is not able to read that data? That in that case, somebody has to manually process it. Now, do you think that this part the robot can do, process manually? This part?
I think no, I think so.
No, right? So that's why it directly all those things where the input is not proper, the robot cannot do anything, right? So it directly move to the end stage. Apart from this, we have simply automated the complete flow. So whenever we start a process, the first thing we see that which are all the steps which we can automate, which are all the steps which we cannot automate. Now a point to remember, and if you would have noticed here, the business is nowhere using any of the OCR activities, right? They are not using any OCR or any of the extra technologies because they can directly go and read the data. But when, let's say, I was developing and I was going through the process, someday I found that this purchase order number is coming in a form of an image, right? Now, as a human, you can read the image, right? You can see that, okay, in the photo, I can see the order as 1, 2, 3, 4. But how would the robot know? For that, you have to apply an extra technology, which is called the OCR, optical character recognition, which means the image will be first read by the OCR technology, then you get the product code. But it was nowhere available in the manual process, right? But it was a part of your 2B process. So 2B process is something which you will get to know if you understand the complete as is process. Do you think that without understanding the complete as is process, a developer can go and work on the 2B process,
No, Mukesh.
right? So that circle back to the first point, that whenever we have to understand a business process, we have to understand the input, the process flow, the source applications, and the output, right? Now, in this case, the output was exactly the same. Send an email, move to the process folder. The same thing is happening here. Okay, so that was as is versus 2B. So whenever we start a process, we first go that what is as is, what is a 2B process, what are the things we have to automate. And now this has created a kind of layout, a kind of framework for me, which I can refer and I can do the next set of automations. Okay, moving forward now. If I give you 5 processes, okay, and I tell you that you have to automate these 5 processes. So now one question, do you think that we should automate all the processes, or there should be a category for automation where I say that, okay, this is a good automation and this is not so good automation? Yes, we can automate everything, right? But if I give you 5 processes and I tell you that now you decide that which process is the most suitable candidate for automation, how would you choose? Okay, so for that, there are some thumb rules which are decided, such as first one is called the rule based, which means that the process is accurately divided and processed in form of a decision, right? It is completely rule based and it has data interpretation, which means that the process is captured in a predefined logic. If I go to this one, you can see, right? The logic was precisely defined. If the code is present, do this. If the code is not present, do this. If I tell you that, if I give you a solution where it says that the code is designed, but there is nothing in the no part, do you think then it would be a good candidate for automation when you are not sure what to do,
No, Mukesh.
right? So the first thing is the rule should be clearly defined, right? The second thing is stable. This is very important, right? We pick our automation process which is stable, which means that we are not expecting any changes in the next few months. I give you an automation to develop, let's say this one. I tell that, okay, you just go and automate this process. But after 2 months, this ERP application got changed. And instead of this ERP application, now let's say I got a database. Now, what would happen to the developer? The developer will go and develop this until the time it is moving to production. I am saying that I do not require your automation because now it requires a database. So now one question to you. Do you think that I should take automation which is having a frequent change or which is going to update? Or should I take the stable process? What do you think?
If it is going to change, means we need to make
Hmm,
some like uh, the first one you said.
stable process, right? But it
Yeah,
does not mean that the process has to be stable. It means that it can change, but at least for some time, it should not change, right? So if you will just read this, it
yeah,
says process that has been there for a certain period of time and no changes are expected within the next months, right? 2, 3, 4 months. These are the good candidate. But if let's say I tell you that there is a change which is happening next week, then you would say that, okay, this is not a good candidate for automation. Probably we'll stick to someone which is more stable, right? So rule based, stable. The third one is called the standard input, which means that if I give you an automation, on one side, I tell you that, okay, as an input, I am giving you an Excel. And the second process, I am telling you that as an input, I am giving you scanned PDF. Which one would be easier to automate? Excel or the scanned PDF? Which one would be easy?
Excel.
Why
I
do you
think
say
so.
so? Why do you say so, Excel?
Uh, because the OCR we need to make some corrections, the selectors.
Yeah,
Sometimes we need to get some dynamic value,
right.
but in
Right.
Excel,
So yeah, so that means Excel is a kind of a standard input, right? I won't say standard input, but
yeah,
input is easily readable, right? So if the
yeah,
input is
yeah,
standard,
yeah,
the input in the process should be electronically readable using a technology. It can be OCR, a good example of invoices having predefined, right? But if I tell you that, okay, there is an automation which is having a Citrix, then you will prefer the OCR one, right? So more the input is standard, more it is a good process for automation. Okay. So rule based, the process should be stable. It should not be expecting any change and the standard input, right? So if I have to ask you what is a good candidate for automation as a developer, you should be knowing that these are the factors which we need to take care while selecting a process for an automation. Okay. So whenever we get a new process, I usually ask this question, that is it a rule based? Is it stable? What are the inputs? What are the output, right? All these things. Once a developer understands all of this, you can actually categorize the processes into 4 parts. The first part is manual or non-repetitive process, which means that the process steps are performed by the humans and can be different every time the process is executed, which means that the process is non-repetitive. There's one more
yeah.
factor which is coming, which is called the repetition. How much the process
Okay,
is repetitive. So now you can divide the processes based on these factor into 4 categories. The first one is manual and non-repetitive, which means that the steps are performed by the humans and can every time the process is executed. Every time you execute, it is different, right? So that means it is non-repetitive. The second thing, it can be manual and repetitive, which means that the business is doing the process manually, but the steps are repetitive. Now, the next is semi-automative and repetitive. So as the self-explanatory, some of the repetitive steps have been already automated using macro outlook. So it is semi-automated, and here you need RPA. The last one is called automated, which means that there is no need of humans and the entire process is done by the robots, right? So overall, and process can be divided into 4 categories. It can be a manual process, non-repetitive, semi-automated, or automated, right? But to decide on which category it falls, you have to understand that which candidate is good for automation or not, right? I'll take a pause if you have any questions on this slide which says, how do you select a good automation candidate?
uh, yeah, Mukesh, I have a doubt.
Yeah, yeah, tell me.
This, so the stable thing, so it is the stable process used for the automations which are doing for like 1 or 2 months. It won't use for the like after 3 months it is going to be changed. Like
No, so stable process means, okay, so for example, take this example, okay. I tell that this ERP is going to be replaced by a database next week, okay. So do you think that I should still automate it with ERP?
no,
No. But if I say that, okay, we are assuming that this ERP will change, but at least it is going to change in, let's say, 6 months, right? So that means for 6 months, I can have this automation,
yeah,
right? So that means that you should prefer a stable process. So that's why it says process that have been on a certain period of time and no changes are expected within the next months. Now that depends on the frequency of the process. That if it is a monthly process and you say that it is going to decommission in 6 months, that means you are only going to run the process 6 times, right? But
yeah,
if it is a daily
yeah,
process, then the number is huge, right? So
yeah,
based on your
yeah, yeah,
requirement, you have to judge.
yeah, yeah, Mukesh.
Okay.
Yeah, got it, Mukesh. Yeah, got it.
Okay. Let's move forward to the next slide, which says automation complexity. If I have to ask you that, tell me if this process is a complex process or it's a easy process or how it is, right? So do you know that how do you know whether the automation is complex or not? And what are the factors which plays a role to decide the automation complexity, right? When I say automation complexity, for example, for the first thing, number of screens. Okay. RPA works on programming, right? The robot goes, take the data from one screen to another screen and all those things, right? The more the number of screens, it means the more automation you have to do. Correct? Yes or no?
Yes, yes,
Right?
Mukesh.
If I tell you that you have to write an automation on Excel, on the other hand side, if I tell you that you have to write an automation on a virtual machine, on a Citrix, or on an mainframe, that means your automation effort will slightly increase, right? So that means that the complexity of the automation is a mixture of different factors. First thing is the number of screens. That means how many steps you are doing, 100, 200, 300, how many screens are involved, what are the kinds of applications you are involving, Office, browsers, mainframe, SAP, anything, right? Next thing is business logic scenario, right? How many business logic or decision points you have, right? So talking to this example, you have only 1, 2, 3 decision points, right? 1, 2, 3. But if I give you a solution which is having more than 20 or 30 decision points, that means it becomes a complex one, right? Because you have to code the same logic again. So business logic scenario means how many scenarios your automation is going to cater. The more the business scenarios, the more decision points, the more complex it becomes. And the last thing, which is that the type and number of inputs, which means that what is the input, right? Is it a standard input? It is a non-standard input. Is it a free form text? Is it a PDF, database, Excel? Grouping of all these things, you can actually decide that what is an automation complexity. Now, all these again circle back to our first slide, that when I told you that you have to be very much aware of what are the input, what is the process flow, what is the source application, and what is the output, right? If you are fully aware of the inputs, right? And I tell you that, okay, for the input, there is a PDF, there is an Excel, there is a scanned PDF. You would say that, okay, the complexity is higher. I tell you in the process flow, there are only 2 decision blocks, yes or no. You would say that, okay, the process flow is fairly easy. I tell you in the source application, you have to go to mainframe, you have to go to Citrix, you have to go to SAP. You would say that, okay, it increases my development effort. And lastly, I tell you that, okay, I need to have the output in the form of a simple Excel. You say, okay, this is easy, right? So all these things actually go and decides the complexity of the automation. So before you start any automation, as the RPA developer, you should be aware of that, okay, what is the automation complexity, right? Now, do you think that if I give you some process, you would be able to at least tell me that what is the automation complexity? You get an high level idea that what exactly is an automation complexity?
Yeah, 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 Mukesh.
Okay. So number of
Yeah,
screens, type of application,
yeah.
business logic, type of
Applications,
inputs, right? And
logics.
all of these scenarios
Yeah,
make something which is called the automation complexity.
complex.
So
Yeah,
this factor you should always, as an RPA developer, you should be always having in mind, right? So that was the first thing which I say, automation first mindset, right? So you should be aware of all these things, that what is a good automation candidate, what is the automation complexity, right? After that,
yeah,
once you are done all of these things, you have to decide what is this process. Is it a no RPA process? Which means that the process where it is frequently changing. I say, okay, next week it is database, the other week it is SAP, the other way it is email, right? Then it is a no RPA for me, right? The environment is volatile and multiple things are changing. Then it is a no RPA. Semi-automation, where I say that, okay, I may not automate all the 20 steps, but let's break it. We can only automate 15 steps, 5 steps we will stick to the manual, right? Such as validation, security token. So that process is called semi-automation. So first no RPA, semi-automation. The third category is called the high cost RPA, which means that the process that are digital, which can be automated, but they are including some of the complex bits such as OCR, or I would say such as computer vision, right? So for the computer vision, you would require the computer vision APIs, you would require advanced programming skill for something, right? So the process is automable. It is a good candidate for RPA, but it is a high cost RPA, which means that there are some of the complex things which are included. And the last one is called the zero touch automation. Process that are digital, all the system are highly static process environment. We can easily go and break down the instruction and everything is clearly defined. Then we tell that, okay, this is an automation and we are happy to do this automation, right? So these are some of the overall high level category which you should be actually able to put your automation on. So if I'm the project manager and I give you one process automation and I tell you that, okay, you go and you tell me what is this automation, right? So based on the previous factor, you should be now able to tell me that, yes, Mukesh, this is a semi-automation process. I cannot automate everything, but we can do this. You should tell me, okay, this is not an RPA process because the systems are changing, right? All these things. Understood the process categories?
Yeah, Mukesh, got it.
Now, this is the slide, I think, which you were interested in, right? So if you are looking on the screen, right, there are certain vertical sections which are created, which look something like this, right? So first one is prepare RPA. Second is solution design. So this is nothing but a typical RPA lifecycle, right? Which means that first of all, we prepare for the RPA, right? Then we design the solution. Then we develop the solution. Then we test it, stabilize it, right? That means that before moving to the production, we need to stabilize. And then once it is deployed, we make sure that we continuously monitor and do the improvement whenever it is coming, right? So this is a RPS lifecycle, which looks something like this, right? Don't look at the other pieces. Do you understand the first line now, right? We'll talk all of this in a bit moment, but first understand the first line, which I'm highlighting, this guy. You understand this thing? Prepare, solution design, build, test, stabilize, and constant improvement. Any question in any of this, in any of these 6 circles?
No, Mukesh.
Okay. So now whenever I'm saying that we are preparing for the RPA, right? So that means the first thing is we should get the documents, right? Which process to automate, which not to automate, right? We need to go and talk to the people, right? We need to have the prioritization of the process, which means that if I have got 50 processes, I need to know that which one should I take and which one I should not automate or which one I should park, right? So if you're looking on this one, right? So this gray one are the guys who are actually responsible for doing this stuffs, right? Inventory of the process, which means that who is going to get all the processes, that guy is called the business analyst. Okay. So the business analyst actually going to go and get me the inventory of the processes. He is going to tell that, okay, these are all the processes which we can automate. And then this one, which says decision regarding the pipeline prioritization, right? If I give you 50 processes and somebody has to decide that, okay, which to automate, which not to automate, that is again done by the business, which means that the business, right? The who is owning the complete automation project for whom we are doing the automation, they have to tell us that, okay, you need to prioritize. And the last one is called the PM, nothing but the project manager, that how do we plan and communicate all of these things. So these are the initial beginning phase of the prepare RPA. Depending on the kind of project or the organization you are working, sometime you might be working with the business analyst here, right? The business analyst might need your help to assess the process as well. Okay, that which are the processes which we can pick for automation or not, right? But the work is associated with the business analyst, but depending on the kind of team or the work, you might also need to help sometime the business analyst. Understood the prepare RPA? Any question on this one?
No, Mukesh. I
Okay.
got it.
Once you have the RPA process with you, the next thing is you need to create a solution design document. Before you create the solution design, there are some documents which are coming, such as PDD, which is called the process design document. Then there is something which is called the solution design document, right? So these are all the bits which we have to do, which means that first the process design document will be created, that how the business is doing the process, how the robot will do. That part is done by the business analyst. Then somebody has to go and write the test scenarios, because once we deploy it to the testing, we need to actually go and test the robots, right? We need to go and test. So we need to create the test scenarios, test cases. So who will do that? Business analyst and the QA, which is the quality assurance or the testing team for that matter. I have got the sign off PDD that the business is telling that, okay, we are not going to change the process in next 12 months. This is our automation. We are happy with the to be process. We have created the test scenarios. Parallelly, you will have someone who is called the solution architect. This is a senior guy who is actually going to create the architecture of the process and how does the process and the automation would look like, right? He will tell you, okay, you have to build it in RE framework. We will create queues. We are going to use Orchestrator. We are not going to use queues. We are going to use Excel. And all these things will be done with the help of the solution architects, right? Once this guy has designed, you need to also take care that where exactly you are going to deploy this process, right? What are the security and the infra related thing that you need to take care, such as that if I tell you that, okay, we have to log into a secure application. Now there would be a security team or an infra team which would come in picture that, okay, the security says that you need to store the password in CyberArk. The infra engineer says that we are still in the Outlook version of 2010 and you are doing in Office 365, it might be not capable, right? So all this assessment will be done by the infra and the IT team. And here comes a little bit role of the RPA developer, where he says that it is creating of the DSD, which means that the design specification document, right? Based on the PDD, whichever you get, and all the inputs from the solution architect, the RPA developer is supposed to create a DSD, which is called the design specification document, that how would the automation look like when we are doing it in the UiPath Studio, right? So here you would actually need the RPA developer help. But again, depending on the structure, this can be clubbed with this guy also, right? With the solution architect, he can actually go and give you the DSD also, right? But ideally, it is the job of the RPA developer to work from the solution design phase. Understood the design phase?
Yeah, Mukesh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing is build RPA. So till this point, your automation requirements are finalized. You understand that what is the process, whom to automate, who is the client, and what we have to build. Now automation requirements are finalized. Then you come to a phase which is called build RPA, where you will actually go and do the process automation. You will write the code in UiPath Studio, RE framework, everything you will do here, right? Once you are done with the coding, you are also going to do the technical or the unit testing, which means that the developer testing. So do you think that before giving it to the testing team, the developer also should test the code, or he should directly develop and give it to the team, right? The developer first
I
should
think,
test the code, correct?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is called the unit testing. RP developer will automate the process. RP developer will do the unit testing. Then the process owner or the IT team will prepare a test data, which means that once you move to the production, you need to have some kind of test data, right? We are writing an automation that A plus B equal to sum. Now I'll ask the business, you give me the value for A and B. We'll run it for different data and we'll see that if the expected output is coming or not, right? Who will validate the data? It will be done by the business analyst. That once you have got one set of data, you will ask the BA to, okay, can you please validate that either if we are moving in the correct speed or not, right? Now, once it is done, you need to prepare your environments for the UAT. Once the complete development is done, the business analyst has validated the development output that, okay, it is working as perfect. The next thing which you are going to do is the test the RPA. So till this part, your process would be ready and it would be called the automated process. Once your automation is ready, you would need to perform the UAT, you will automate the process, you will test the process. Now, testing can be done in two parts. One is by the testing team, which can be using a UiPath test suite to test the process from the orchestrator from different environments. At the same time, your business also will go and test this thing, right? It will go, and while doing this, it will also generate the defects or the bugs. Now, who should fix the bugs? What do you think? In the testing, I got an defect. Who will fix the defect? Who will fix those?
In that, I think after testing it will deploy. In the testing it will got error means, so developer need to fix.
Fix it, right? So the bug fixing is again a
Yeah,
task which the RP developer will do in the test RP phase.
yeah,
Okay. Now
yeah.
we need to have a coordination between all this testing, development, and all those things, right? So then once everything is done, we'll show this final result to the business and we'll ask them for a sign off. We'll tell them that you give us the sign off. Once they give us the sign off, which is the business analyst, then we'll go and move it to the production. When moving it to the production, we require the IT guy who has stabilized this. We require the RPA developer and the solution architect. Why do I require an RPA developer? Because RPA developer will know that which asset I need to create, where is the config file, what values to put, what not to put, what need to remove, right? So you need to help during the production movement. Okay. Here, once it is done, once it is deployed, we need to train and create the user manuals, right? Because nobody's know that how the automated process look like, right? So you would have documentation, you would need user manuals, and this would be created by the business analysts, developers, and the process owners. They will train the new members in the team, they will create procedures, they will create user manuals, and this is a group effort of the business analyst, developer, and the process owners, right? So this also, here you would also find the developer. Once it is done, it is given to the production support team. They will do the support and the monitoring thing. And then these are all the things, right? That once it is deployed, the business analyst will actually go and see whether the expected output is matching what the business has told us, right? So all those things will be done by the BA. Then there would be a documentation which would be created by the COE, which is nothing but the Central of Excellence team, which will say that, okay, from this process, we have learned this. They will create a repository, reusable code. All those things would be done by a COE. Handover document is business analyst, which says that now we are handing this, handing this process to the support team, or we will just say that, okay, now we are done with this process. So this documentation part can be done by the COE, can be done by the business analyst, right? So this is just to stabilize the RPA once it is done. Once you are here, which is released in production, you have released this and you are continuously monitoring it. It is stabilized. The last one is called the continuous improvement, which means that here you need to see that what are the benefits which the process is giving, right? Is it us saving us time? Is it saving us money, right? Benefit tracking. Who will do that? That will be done by the process owners, right? Now here some improvements might come, right? Business say that, okay, after 1 year, we are expecting some of the changes. So as soon as they give us changes, we'll again go back to the prepare RPA and follow this cycle, right? So that is nothing but a continuous improvement. So this is how the typical RPA lifecycle look like. This is not a fixed guidelines, but again, depending on your team nature and kind of project you are working, you might be playing different role at different time. But at the most, RPA developer would be mostly involved during the business requirement gathering, designing of the solution, building, while doing the testing to fix the defects, while deployment to help it to move to production, right? So these are the places where the RPA developer would be required to work upon. And these are the other different stakeholders such as business analyst, solution architect, IT, COE, all those things. I'll take a pause for any questions if you have. Understood this?
Uh, yeah, Mukesh, I understand these scenarios, development phases, and I have one question, some
Hmm.
questions not. It is related to this only. So, so the controls like the code we used to control by the Git,
Hmm.
like controls Git,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
what type of environments we use. before the in development, testing, and deployment.
Okay. Okay. See, typically there are, I would say four, not four. Okay, let's count. Okay, the first is the development. Okay, the development environment where you are going to actually develop the code. Okay, it will be a development environment where you will have all the access, admin rights, everything. The developer will develop the code. Once you have developed the code, then we'll move the code to the next phase, which is called the next environment, which is called the testing environment. In the testing environment, your testing team will test your project, and the developer will not have or will have only limited access to the testing environment. Okay. Now, depending on your company, the UAT and the testing environment can be same or it can be different. If it is different, then you would have one more environment, which is called the UAT environment, user acceptance testing environment, which means that the robot will automatically run from UAT and send the output to the business. Once the testing is done, UAT is done, the next phase is come the production environment, right? So total 4 environments: development, test, UAT, and the production. Test and UAT can be clubbed into a single environment. So then it will become 3. Otherwise, it is 4. Okay. And as you move forward, the access of developer will get limited. In the development, developer will have all the access. In the testing, development will have only, let's say, limited access. In the UAT, maybe very limited or no access. And in the production, only maybe read-only access, right? Because as a developer, I should not have access to the higher environments because I may go and change something which may cause other consequences, right? So that way it works. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Mukesh. Thank you, Mukesh.
Okay. Now, the last slide, which I want to talk about is that what are the second last slide, roles and responsibility, right? So these are all the guys which are available in an RPA project. You have a solution architect, you have a business analyst, you have a project manager, RPA developer, infrastructure, business process owner, and the support engineer. Okay. Solution architect, as the name suggests, he will be defining the architecture at the high level, creating the architecture, design architect. He will lead and advise to the developer. RPA business analyst, this is the guy who is actually working close to the business. He will create the as is and the to be, right? Just we have seen as is and the to be. This is the guy who will be having a more knowledge of the business and he understand the RPA technologies. His job would be to create the documentation such as PDD, the process map, and all those things. Next, there is a guy which is called the project manager. Project manager, he would be responsible for creating and managing the RPA team. He will do the resource planning, the team availability. He will see that if the automation is going in the correct direction, right? Project manager most of the time is the single point of contact and he can handle the multiple RPA project at times. Now again, RPA developer are the guys who actually works on the actual development of this one. Infrastructure team, who is good into the security, who will maintain and configure all the softwares, all the infrastructure, UiPath products, everything, users, robots, done by this guy. Business process owners, these are the stakeholders for whom we are delivering, right? For whom we are creating the automation. This can be senior managements, it can be split across domains. We can have business owners from multiple departments, such as we can do process for finance, IT, HR. So these are the business owners. And lastly, once we are done with the automation, we need to move and we need to give this automation for someone who will go and monitor and do all the support thing, right? So RPA support engineer, it can be a different level. We can have L1, L2, depending on the hierarchy, right? We can have different level of support engineer. So these are all the teams which are forming a complete RPA team. And here your RPA developer sits. Okay, so RPA developer is not doing all the things, but it is a team effort, right? All of us are working as a single team to accomplish the automation need. Any question on this slide of roles and responsibility?
No, Mukesh, it is clear.
Okay, the last one. What exactly the RPA developer will do? Okay, now you have to tell me this. I have taken from a job description of an RPA developer. Okay, we have been talking for a while. Now you have to tell me, do you understand all of these things? Read the first one. Do you understand this?
Yeah, identifying
Okay.
Yeah, Mukesh.
Okay. Identifying and designing the business process for automation. You need to identify, you need to design, right? So creating of the DSD,
Yeah,
setting up,
yeah,
testing, and monitoring the automation workflow. Understand this thing that you have to set up, you have
yeah,
to
Mukesh.
test, and you have to monitor. Monitoring and
Yeah,
maintaining the automation post implementation, which means that you need to fix the defects, resolving any potential issues for the smooth business operation, right? In case any defects are there, who would fix it? RP developer, right?
yeah,
Ensuring the quality of the automation, right? You need to make sure that you build an automation which is as per the QA standards, and it should not have any bugs, right? So if there are any bugs, you should only resolve it. Designing the automation process as per the organization need. Reviewing the code, your code should be proper. You should be have that what are the coding best practices. You should always follow that what are the best practices. You should always save your code. You should have a knowledge of integration and everything, right? Reviewing the code, designing expertise, everything. Configuring new automation with efficient and understandable easily automation tool. Configuring new automation with efficient and easily understandable automation tools. That again makes the same line that you need to have right code, right? This guy is very much important, which means that documenting the automation procedures, right? You should be very much good at writing the document, which means that whenever you are doing, right, you need to also document what are the things you are doing. Documentation may be for the reusable component. Document may be for creating of the guides, right? Here, if you'll see, when we are creating this guy, right? Move to production, IT, software developer, training procedure, and the user manuals, right? PA dev, this guy. So this dev is responsible for creating of the document, right? So you should be good at documenting the procedures, how the process is supposed to go. If you have created any reusable component, how do you deploy it? How do you create run books? All those things you should be good at documenting the steps also, right? So documenting the automating procedures is also a roles and responsibility for an RP developer. There are others which keeps on changing, but these are the pretty basics ones. Any questions on this slide?
So if the once
Hmm.
the process is deployed, boat is like deployed, uh, after the deployment, so if the error come in, so the support team it will handle, right?
The support team will handle if they are able to handle, right? Let's say it is an issue with the asset. Let's say it is an
Okay,
issue with the update of the asset, or if it's just a rerun, they can handle. But let's say if there is a code fix which is required, right? If there is a code which has got faulted. Now, if the support team is having a L3 support, they will do it. But if it is not having L3 support, it will circle back to the developer as a defects. Yeah, so it depends, right? Because if your support team is having the L3 support who are actually able to take care of the code fixes, then it will not come to the developer. Otherwise, it will again circle back to the developer.
okay. If they will take care of the uh, uh, like errors, not the updation or any corrections like new
Yes, yes.
corrections, so
Yeah,
they
yeah,
will get back to the developer.
yeah. So let's say there is an asset whose value has to be changed, right? I do not require the developer. I can easily go to the orchestrator, change the value. But if there is a code fix which is required, right, and I do not have the expertise, right? I am from support guy and Mukesh does not know how do you fix the code. Then I'll come to the developer and say that, hey, you have to fix this, right?
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
does
Yeah, it
this
is solved.
meeting
Yeah, it
suffice
is.
your all the doubts, whatever you have of the RP
Yeah,
developer
Mukesh.
things? Yeah.
Yeah, Mukesh. Yeah, Mukesh. Now I can understand in a better manner when compared to previous. Like, yeah, Mukesh, and thank you for your valuable time and your valuable sessions. And I hope you are doing great. Yeah, you are doing great.
Okay, so that is all for this video. I would like to wrap this video here. I hope now you understand the various aspects of working as an RPA developer. In case you have any more questions, any more queries, feel free to drop me a note on the email ID which is mentioned in the description and I shall get back to you. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel and happy automation.